Four, I'm gonna call this meeting to order. So welcome to December 2022's Library Commission meeting. Thanks everyone for joining us. We have Sylvia and Scott in the Zoom, and then the rest of the commission is present here in the Brenton building. So we could start. The first thing on the agenda is the review of the meeting guidelines, but it looks like it's just us. So we will skip that one. And then our monthly reminder to log out hours and count me in. How would you like us to do that, Celia? Because
you can just tell it to me or put it in the chat.
Okay, so let's get our hours to Celia by the end of today, of the end of the meeting.
I logged in. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I put mine in already. Okay.
Well done, Benita.
I did. It's a new day. I'm so excited about being here in person because I've been on this commission now 2 years. And so this is my first opportunity to actually see you all in person. So very excited.
You beat Scott.
Okay, so then let's move on to the approval of the agenda. I'm actually going to add one item before we do that. After we hear from our guest, Chris Barge, about the foundation, let's add in a review of the questions for the commission application. So we'll add that in between item number 6 and 7. Does anybody have any problem with that? Okay, and does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add to the agenda or to reorganize in tonight's agenda? Okay, well then let's move forward. Item number 4, public comment. It seems that we have no members of the public here. So let's move on to reviewing November 2nd's meeting minutes, sorry. And does anybody have any changes or corrections to those? Okay, so let's move on to vote on those. I believe, Benita, you were absent, so you won't vote on those minutes. So
I would abstain, yes.
Yeah. Does anybody, would anybody like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in
So
favor?
much easier. So
Okay.
easy.
Thank you. All right, so we have a guest. Thanks for being here, Chris. Chris, as everybody knows, is the director of the Library Foundation. I feel like this is a really excellent time to hear from you. With the passing of the Measure 6C, this is a good time to hear where the foundation's at and what's going on. So thank you for being here tonight.
Well, great.
Yeah.
And hi, Celia. Hi, Jennifer. I didn't
Hi.
get to say hello to you on the way in. I was busy and distracted by the pizza. Thanks for having me. And, please tell me how this time can be useful. I guess I could give you just sort of an update on what's happening on the foundation side of things and how we're, thinking about this end of the year and the year ahead. I was calling this coming year the year of the Boulder Public Library, just as the calendar turned over in January. We had this potential big ballot measure and also the groundbreaking coming of the first branch in a generation. And it's just so gratifying to be a part of that, as you all have been, and to work with you all on the passage of 6C. That was terrific. And now that it's passed, a couple things I think just the foundation side we'll be looking at, really stepping into our role more and more as advocates for the public library. Really, we've had an incredible advocacy arm that was the Boulder Library Champions. And as a political committee, they don't have any business being in business anymore. And they're really thrilled with that. But what can we do now that the library has been really on the minds and on the lips of everyone in this community more than I think in recent memory? And so as some of these next steps are happening and city council and the county commissioners are working on appointing the next board of directors. You know, I'm going to be interested in the foundation being in communication with the council, with the county commissioners, and also here at year end with every single one of our donors, helping them understand that, you know, whether they voted for this or not, this is what we've all signed up for now. And first and foremost, it's a great thing from the library's perspective. And it's also now providing a floor for charitable donations to sit on. For so long, we had no floor. I mean, we talked for almost 50 years as a foundation, I understand, about, well, should we be quiet about our existence with city council? Because what if they just lower the amount of the appropriation when they find out what we're going to give this year? It was a silly battle, but that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, by definition, there's a floor now. I mean, we get what we get every year. It's similar to a school district in that way, which is terrific. And so that's what I'm out there talking about with our donors is, hey, now more than ever, we're not just here backfilling, helping the library provide the sorts of services that the public assumes the government is paying for. In fact, your donations are going to help us dream about what bells and whistles could be put on this library. What can we do in alignment with the 10-year master plan that we've got? And so speaking of the 10-year master plan, I don't know if all of you know, you might, we just got news last week that we were able to secure a grant of $700,000 from the Colorado Health Foundation in order to build the outdoor spaces around Novo. So my understanding was that with
That's great.
thank you. Yeah, we're thrilled. And as you know, there was some contraction that had to occur with the escalating construction costs of Novo, and anytime there's a delay, it gets more expensive. And all the value engineering had resulted basically in dreams, but dirt, you know, for the opening day plan. And now it won't be dirt. Hopefully, opening day, it'll be the beautiful, you know, the plans that were there. And what I love about the approval from our state's largest private foundation of this is they are affirming the work that Antonia led and that Growing Up Boulder partnered on. They're affirming that this is the way you build equity in the built environment. That, in fact, is what their new funding stream that they opened up is called, Equity in the Built Environment. They have a really complicated, great framework for how to get there through multiple steps over a lot of time. And the fact that first we had applied for a planning grant, which would have been $25,000 because we just assumed that they wouldn't think we were ready. I mean, a couple of years had passed. This plan had been on the shelf for a while during the pandemic. And they said, no, apply for an implementation grant. And it was for somewhere between 250 and 700,000 available. And the fact that they gave us the max was such an affirmation where they were able to set aside their complicated framework that is a very good framework about how you make sure you're listening to community voice and authentically delivering what the community is asking for. They were really excited that it was the location specifically right over the fence from our largest mobile home park in the city. And they took a close look. They interviewed Antonia about the community voice that had been brought into the process. They liked what Growing Up Boulder had done so closely with the area elementary schools, especially Crestview around the corner. And they said, yeah, no, you're ready. So in fact, on Monday, Antonia and I and the playground architect, Carrie White from Urban Play Studio are going to have our first meeting to talk about this. It'll be a few community meetings to do what I'll call like the last mile of community engagement. And then hopefully by the time the Bobcats are out of the way enough, they'll be installing these outdoor amenities and, fingers crossed that it all lines up to where there's a ribbon cutting for the building and the grounds, all at once. So I hope that this is how the foundation can add value moving forward, one of the ways. And, I'll be constantly interested in what you all hear about in terms of opportunities for funding. And I've already got my eye on another opportunity that's too early to talk about, but that would be one area we'd like to develop. Speaking of areas we've been developing, we those of you, Scott and Stephen and David, who've been real involved in this, we approved our comprehensive strategic plan for the foundation. It'll serve us for the next 3+ years. And I'm working now on finalizing our implementation plan of that. Basically, it covers 4 categories that you would expect from a foundation. Number 1, we're fundraising. Number 2, we're about advocacy and awareness about the value of the public library in the community and about, let's help the community move when there are issues needing advocacy. It's about communication. And finally, it's about running a strong organization sustainably. And so we're going to be working on the implementation plan with that. And so that main kind of driver is the fundraising. And one other aspect we've been working on is building a legacy circle plan giving program. And we've managed to bring a few new folks into the program. And I was just on the phone. He wouldn't mind me saying our former board chair moved to the Seattle area. Tim Williams will be our newest member because he's just done some estate planning and included us in his will. So, piece by piece, we're just trying to build up all the different ways that people can get involved philanthropically in support of the library. This transition with standing up the directors, I sent a memo over to city council as well as to county commissioners just in the last day or two. And, just letting them know, hey, Boulder Champions, now that 60 is done, are disbanding as a political group. You can expect to hear more from the Boulder Library Foundation on advocacies around our Boulder Public Library. And right off the bat, excited that you're moving. The fact that you are moving is important. Voters want to see progress on this and, resources for you to look at as you're starting to select who your directors are, should be current and past Boulder Library Commissioners, should be the members of the LDAC, the Library District Advisory Committee. And then you should think about it in terms of a skills rubric, what is the work of the first year in particular, and what geographic and skill-based gaps do you see in coverage of the whole district and in skills that would be particularly helpful, and really just try to give a message of, hey, I know some of us had some differences about policy in terms of whether this was the right proposal, but now that it has been passed, I know that we are all wanting for it to succeed. We want our libraries to thrive. So does anybody have any questions about anything?
Did you get any response to your letter?
Yeah. Marta reached out, thanked me and said, just asked for clarification. She hadn't heard yet about who the two, it's Aaron Brockett and Nicole Spear on the city council side. And so I provided her, just, let her know she and Claire would be working with them. And then got a nice note back from, I had copied Commissioner-elect. Help me.
Ashley
Stoltzman. Yeah, thank you. Who's been terrific, as you know. I mean, huge champion. In fact, a champion.
Yeah.
A Boulder Library champion for the cause.
So who moved to Seattle?
That was Tim Williams. Did you know that?
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in line to be our next chair.
Okay.
And then he just got an opportunity of a lifetime on a place that he bought. He's been spending a lot of time with the Forest Service out there, helping them, in his words, do the sorts of things the government used to pay for. So he's out there thinning forests and doing fire mitigation in a much more lush environment, he assures us, than what you find here in Colorado.
So who's the current chair?
So-
Incoming chair?
Yeah, we have co-chairs.
Okay.
And so Alicia, who has been chair for a while, is paired up with Nicole Sager. And they are co-chairs. And then we have, in addition to them on our executive committee, a secretary, that's Jen Yee, and a treasurer, Isaac Andres. And the idea would be when Alicia rolls off the board, when she's term limited in about a year, Nicole would be the chair, standing alone.
The grant that you received.
Yeah.
The first I've heard of it. Well, not that you received it. I'm sorry. Amazing. Well done.
Thank you.
When will you be announced? Like, when will that be
Yeah.
public and hyped up and all those things?
Well, the grant agreement says there'll be a wire into our bank tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so once we have the money in hand, I'll feel comfortable following their guidelines, and they say, yeah, go ahead and publicize it. So we are in the middle of dialing for dollars. And so I'm gonna, you can expect at least by Monday, maybe maybe before then. And the way I'll do it is, is a press release out, and we'll see what traction that gets. But then we'll put a blast out to our constituency as well.
Is there any match from the city required or anything like that?
They didn't need a match.
Or any contribution from city side? So the city doesn't even have to approve or accept the gift because it's coming to you.
In fact, no,
foundation. That's very
right. It's
interesting.
coming to the foundation, and we intend to write a check to the yet to be formed district whenever that's formed and ready to receive the money. We'll see. I mean, we'll deal with the timing and the payment, but as far as the Colorado Health Foundation is concerned, the Boulder Library Foundation is their grantee, and we're going to see to it that these amenities are built. Obviously, we don't do that in a vacuum. We don't
Yeah.
actually do the work. We are here. What's beautiful about this particular grant is that this was on the agenda. Yeah, I mean, it had to be taken off the plate because of budget shortfalls. And so we're not dialing up a dreamy idea. We're simply implementing what the plan had been, but had to be taken off or at least put on pause.
Yeah, the plan for the playground was, I think, half baked, right? Like there were some elements of it that we had landed on with the community, but then we were still doing community engagement at the time in which the pandemic landed. And so we had done with Growing Up Boulder, massive engagement with Crestview and some older students, but the feedback that they gave, I'm sure that was shared with Colorado Health, and the kids had come up. I mean, these kids had come up with it. You were a panelist too. I was a panelist there.
It was really
It
fun.
was fascinating. They had such incredibly good ideas and really sensitive to a lot of the considerations because we said what our considerations were about access and
How long ago was that, the panel?
Pandemic.
2020. Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, so some of it was done virtually.
And I want to comment too, that when the library says a community engagement plan feels half-baked, an affirmation from an outside funder that no, you're ready for implementation.
No, I mean, the design of the
But
park
David,
itself was
it speaks to your standards at the library, that you think that years of community engagement that got us to a point to win a $700,000 grant could be anything but totally spit polished.
Yeah.
And that's how the rest of the world is affirming the really, really good work of the library in this case.
Because my kids are at Crestview. They weren't participants in any of this, but it was interesting. I think you guys probably remember when Holly Davis, the principal, had said like what the kids got motivated through staying online in the pandemic was this project. So this project was their most fun and exciting project
Wow.
that they played through in those initial 3 or 4 months of school closures, which was a nightmare of having kids at home. But the kids that got to participate in this, they did such an amazing job. Crazy stuff.
That's
Crazy great stuff. It was awesome.
You know what it reminds me of? So we're in a different hat. I worked for Denver Public Schools and managed all like new school construction and bond program stuff, but there was the whole concept of these learning centers, right? And playgrounds being, sort of, I can't even think, I had it in my head, the name of like sort of this program, but learning labs and, that kind of thing. But and it ended up being sort of a bond funded initiative to have these, sort of learning landscapes. That's what it was in, schools throughout the district. And that became like this great selling point for the bond program. Just is our school getting a learning landscape, right? And so that's what that was aligned with. But there's so much documented value of shaping those kind of outdoor spaces with and for kids. That's just pretty powerful. I think your press release should say like, it's been X number of years that, whenever like a nonprofit in Boulder like received a grant like this, like, you got to highlight that. I mean, I don't know that, I just can't even think about when it's the last time, that kind of independence, right? In terms of like not having to be boosted up by another organization or a city or a hospital or whatever. It's like, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. I have no idea how to quantify how this stacks up against others, but I do think that it was one of those match made in heaven situations where a new funding opportunity is looking for this sort of a project, and it affirmed the incredible work that the library did, and it's that community voice focus that I'm so excited about the culture of the new district carrying with it, bringing from this library into that library.
It would be really great to re-engage those kids when the park is there.
Yeah.
Right.
So they were third graders, so they'll be seventh graders at
Holy
probably
smokes.
Centennial by the time it's 7th or 8th grade, depending on when we get this done. But it would be really great because to re-engage those kids by the time they're 7th or 8th graders, they will also have some maturity or perspective to have some interesting feedback on something that they remember doing. And it will stand out to them because it was the year of the pandemic, I'm sure. And as you say, got them through it. It'd be really great to see if we could re-engage and get some
I think that's the
reflection.
intent. We haven't talked about it, but have we talked about it? And Tony and I talked about, could we get Growing Up Boulder to actually re-engage the kids who are part of that?
Yeah, I'm committed to that. I know Mara's committed to that, the
Yeah.
executive director of Growing Up Boulder. So
Yeah.
we'll
And they were
figure it
third
out.
and fifth grade students.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember speaking to third graders.
Yeah. There's also an opportunity to align with Parks and Rec that is developing ball fields right next to this
Yeah.
property, in Violet Park, that I guess it's the strip that's along Violet. Isn't that right? On the north side of Violet? And what an amazing outdoor cultural complex. This is gonna have ball fields at Violet Park. It'll have outdoor amenities all around the library, have the library itself. And then if the plan carries through and BMOCA, is able to put what they're talking, you've got this cultural campus, and playgrounds and parks where there was none of that.
So cool.
Yeah.
That's a great, BMOCA seems more and more likely. They hired like the best curator in Denver. They like stole the dam's most famous curator
Really?
and she's the new director. I was like, really? But yeah, there was a bidding war in the Colorado History Museum and BMOCA were bidding for her and trying to steal her right from the dam, but BMOCA got her and she's like amazing. So
Really?
it feels like it made it be like, well, that BMOCA expansion might actually happen in that area. So it's so exciting.
That is cool.
It was kind of like wild. I didn't realize the ballparks are going to be there too.
And that's being made possible by a big grant of similar size. I remember reading about maybe 6 months ago. And it was a government funding stream. I want to say DOLA, something like that.
Maybe.
Did the city own that land there? That kind of
Yes.
along
Yeah.
Violet? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's been designated for a park for quite some time. They pitched, at the same time we pitched for the library to get funding, and they were not ready at that time, but they have since secured.
Oh, okay.
They got a large grant, actually, to do some of the work in that Violet Park area.
Wow.
And then the other big piece of the puzzle is the Waldorf School. So Waldorf School is in the context right now of doing a lot of massive fundraising, and they have plans. They own a lot of property there in North Boulder, just on the west side, to do a pretty significant campus. So it's now in that area, but it's a pretty small footprint, but they intend to build a fairly massive campus, which when I saw the plans included I think a 250 seat theater.
Wow.
Really?
At Shining Mountain.
Yep.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Go North Boulder.
Go North Boulder.
I have one other question on the master plan, your master plan.
Yeah, the strategic plan.
Strategic plan, sorry. Is that going to be public? Is that going to be something we can see? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd be happy to forward an executive summary to you, and it'd be, give you a sense of the kind of categories of work that I outlined. It'll go in more depth.
I
Yeah,
think we
sure.
were interviewed by the consultant.
Oh,
Who did that
Yes,
work,
yeah.
right?
So Jenny
Yeah,
Arbergash
that's right.
did a really, really great thorough job for us.
Yeah.
On that.
And then I don't want to miss out people joining us on Zoom. Sorry if we keep talking. If anyone has any questions or comments for Chris.
Can you hear us okay, Sylvia? And Scott? Okay, good.
Okay, well, everything sounds so promising and exciting. So thank you so much for coming to join us, Chris.
Can I just say one more thing that just relates to maybe what Chris was saying in the beginning about, we now have, the voters spoke and we're moving forward, but I wondered about some way to sort of engage and connect with the 49% or whatever that number is of voters who opposed the
Yeah. 47.
district. And I don't know, I'd like
Yeah.
some way, but I just think it was such a professionally run effort and there wasn't, mudslinging kind of stuff, at least this, the positive side of the
Yeah.
campaign, but
I agree with you, Benita. And what I think about is the polling that happened in April found that up to 74% we're ready for approving some sort of funding proposal for the library. Now, clearly that tightened, we expected it to. But I'm still thinking in broad chunks about how 3/4 of the residents of this district are so incredibly big fans of libraries that they're ready to pay something for it, something else extra. We lost some of them who said, well, not that way. And that's how I'm looking at it is, okay, so you didn't agree with this policy proposal, but it does not mean that you're not a diehard library fan. And what I want this next year to do is to have the district formation and some of the activation with the new funding coming in with the 5 priority areas David's talked about, start to calm the nerves of those who voted against it and say, actually, this is working out pretty well. Maybe I'm still grumpy about this on a policy level, but I love our libraries and I love that our libraries are getting better and better. That's kind of the dream for me, is to get us back to that 3/4 of town feeling like plugged in about being jazzed about the library.
I didn't do it and I missed any gatherings of folks after the election, but I just wondered about the expanded areas of the district. Was that vote positive in favor? Do you know, like by the precinct?
Yeah,
and
we
areas?
did look at the precinct breakdown.
Gun Barrel was overwhelming. I mean, the area surrounding Gun Barrel was overwhelmingly in support. They were getting something. I was surprised at how high a percentage of people in Gun Barrel voted for library. In some precincts, more than 70%. So the areas where we did not do well were west of Broadway. I mean, so west of Broadway from downtown all the way here,
Higher the tax
including
bill,
including Lee Hill, and I can't remember what the precinct up in near Gold Hill did. I think it was. It seemed to me like every precinct west of Broadway we lost. Almost every precinct east of Broadway we won. If you looked at the density of housing areas, we did exceptionally well. So wherever there was dense housing, Mapleton, we did win. That's
There was
right.
2 precincts in Mapleton Hill, but one of them was majority, like 62%.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's also important to understand that the first returns, which was 2/3 of the vote, was a negative answer. Who votes early? When you start to answer that, you start to understand how every subsequent chunk of ballots, there wasn't one that wasn't in favor. They were 55 to 63 in favor, every single bit of that last thirds of the vote. And so then I think about who is too busy to vote early. It's very different than in Georgia.
Yeah.
Where it's opposite about who votes early, who votes late. But in Boulder, Colorado, the early vote tends to be seniors and people with time to to really, really make up their mind before they even receive the ballot language. Also, the ballot language is favorable to us. I mean, it said, do you want a better library for 3.5 mils? Who knows what 3.5 mils is? I mean, and, but also lots of very informed voters who've been tracking this for years. I know I didn't drop my ballot off. I mean, I'll out myself
Right.
until the week before.
Yeah.
You know, and that was early compared to some friends I have with busy lives. So you do see a pattern between that first 2/3 early vote and the last 2/3, which was slightly against versus overwhelmingly for by comparison.
I think it's an excellent question though, Benita, and I think it's something that all the entities around the library need to continue to consider is how do we reach out to those people? How do we make this process really open and people can find the information out that they need to know about what the next steps are and those pieces.
And if I recall, Scott, at the Library Foundation meeting earlier this month or last month, brought up the same sentiment. Anita, I don't know, Scott, if you wanted to talk about some of the ideas that you had, or am I misremembering that comment or conversation, Scott?
If you want to start, Stephen, otherwise I'll just jump in.
No, jump in. Go ahead, Scott.
You know, the major concern that I recall from that meeting was that there were some people who were a little bit, I don't know how to describe it, frustrated, angry, whatever it might be, with how certain segments of the opposition acted in terms of, say, the business community, or in terms of some groups that were spreading what they felt was misinformation or false information. And that there was some sentiment that they're like, you know, we really don't want to deal with these people. But there was one board member who said, listen, you really need to, and he's a former business owner, and he was saying, you know, you really need to get past that. And then what I mentioned is that they're really what's happening now is the library district and the foundation will be playing for what I call the next game. And by that, I mean, at some point, if the district needs to ask for a mill levy increase, they're going to need to engage the public again. If they're going to want to, you know, do something, whatever it might be, they're going to need to engage the public, and they're going to need to work with those individuals and groups that were on the opposing side. And so I say now it needs to be the focus, as I say, should be on the next game. You know, this game is over. Now we got to focus on the next one and saying, as Chris was saying, how do you connect with those people who were against it? And the people, I'll be really honest, the circle that I went, that I know, 100% against the district. I don't know anything within my family or some certain people that I knew that voted for the district. And I understand why they voted against it. It was strictly, in my view, a policy decision, and they looked at looking at some different issues. And again, it was not that they don't like the library, but they were looking at some things, important things in their view, in terms of increasing taxes. Then it would have the capacity to go up in an unlimited fashion. And they were looking at it from saying, you know, there's a number of other ballot issues on it. You know, property taxes gone up so much. So that was kind of the group that I was hearing from, and to work with them, and even, you know, if you read the different the different letters to the editor, the business community was actually pretty well divided. There were a lot that were strongly in favor of the district, and others like, no, we're not going to vote for this. So it's going to be necessary to, as I say, play for the next game and work with those groups. And I think it was one of the foundation members said, you know, the goal is going to be to demonstrate to those opposing groups the value that they're getting for what they're paying for. If we don't show that to them, that they're getting value, they're going to say, my money is just gone, and you're just taking it, and there's no value. So that's going to be, I think, part of the challenge, is to show those groups, hey, you're getting value for this. This is why, and on and on and on. And you know, we've got data to support that.
We wouldn't be considering a mill levy. I mean, that's like down the line. That's not even,
30
yeah,
years,
it's not anybody's lifetime. You're right.
Or necessarily bond. I mean, it's a good
Yeah.
thought, but it's.
Yeah. I'm
Like
just
the likelihood, if we do it
how friendly
without
do we
any
have to be?
likelihood that we're going out for money again. Yes. You know, really, given the size of the district and the limit to growth within Boulder, the likelihood of us doing another major project in the next 20 years is pretty slim, right? Where it might occur is if the growth in East Boulder happens in the manner in which they project, or if they do something with Area 3 in North Boulder. If they do something with Area 3 in North Boulder, it's just going to make the North Boulder Library seem too small, like when that happens. But it's very unlikely that the city and the planning department will decide to invest in the infrastructure in such a way to make that land developable. And doing it would require a vote of the public, which they're not going to be likely to give up, you know, all of the west of 36.
So it's one parcel.
Yeah, one parcel.
In-
So East Boulder is a place where growth will occur. How much growth is yet to be defined, but they're almost finished with the East Boulder sub-community plan. We'll be able to work off of that plan and look at where development happens, whether or not Meadows Library could change in some way. Could it expand? Could it become larger? Could it move to a different location? Will there be another location that is required in East Boulder, more along the Arapahoe corridor? I don't know, right? Like, but those are 20-year horizons. It's not nothing.
Living, we have to prove living within the budget, right? In these early years, right? In this, a successful governance transition. Yeah. And so I guess that is the best, you know, sort of gift you can give to, you know, somebody who voted against it, you know, is, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, thank you. It's good to visit with you.
Come again.
You're welcome to stay. We'll go.
Okay.
It's completely up to you.
You're welcome to have some more pizza.
Yeah.
I am gonna have more pizza. I like,
Great pizza.
it's very good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna move on and add in the items additional to the agenda, which is to review the questions for to interview a new library commissioner. So in April will be, my term is up and there'll be a new commissioner coming in. So these are the questions. No, we're adding. It will be these- Yeah, no problem. So we need to get these questions reviewed this evening so that we can get these to the city, because if we remember from our last meeting, we're actually late to their deadline, but in our last meeting, we didn't know whether the measure was going to pass or not. So that's why we delayed reviewing these questions and revising these questions. So this is something that we need to do tonight so that Celia and Jennifer can get this to the city. So.
And there's, can I just, maybe you were gonna say this, but, and there's the thinking that somebody would actually think to apply for the library commission in this stage of transition.
As of today, yes, they will be replacing they'll be filling the seat. And so as of today, that person will probably sit from April until December. While the library district is set up. And so we do need to have questions to ask that person. So these are the questions that go out in the application, and they're typically a written response. We have in place 5 questions. So they were sent out in addition to this meeting packet. Did everybody get those? Okay, so we all know what we're working from. How would we like to do this? Would we like to take each question and decide whether we have changes to it or whether we're going to remove that question from the application? Does that work for everybody?
So I do remember last year and reviewing this, and I thought we had changed some of these last time, but they still look the same.
These were the questions that went in the application last year. This is.
But I'm just saying, last year when we reviewed it, we'd suggested, and I thought agreed on some changes to the questions and the way that they were phrased. like, for example, I'm going to start at the bottom that number 9, some members of the public perceive that the library has a problem. I mean, I think I had suggested, I thought we had agreed, like, it's something like, there's a perception that the library has problems providing a safe and secure environment, and I don't know.
Hey,
That's-
Jane,
Anyway,
Yes.
I actually have a quick question because I'm obviously, I can't open up the file because it would just take me forever. But is there a way that you can share those questions on the Zoom screen?
Oh, can we drop them in the chat, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, do something. Put them in the chat, put them on the screen share, whatever.
Well, these were, so the questions, unless the city has sent us back questions from the previous year, these were the questions that went out last year, and there were changes made to these questions last year. So I believe that this, I do remember having a long discussion, a lengthy discussion about how we're going to change them, but this was what was agreed upon last year. And
I
these
just
are,
happened to see last year's email related to this because it popped up, and that's why I, like, why are these all the same? Anyway.
okay, should we, sorry, Steve.
I'm just circling around through these questions. I mean, do you want to go question by question, Jane? You could do that.
I think we should do that. We'll
Sure.
just go question by question. So it starts at question number 5 because the first 4 questions are asked as standard questions asked by the city. And then these would be the ones specific to the Library Commission.
Okay.
So in an application, you could be applying to the planning board or
Right, and with the other
Parks
questions.
and Recs or something. So starting at number 5.
Right, so just, we had a conversation about like answering a question, yes or no, when the answer obviously should be yes, right? Have you participated in other community organizations? I mean, like, who would say no? Like,
Mhm. But then it says, please describe. So
I
I
know,
think
but if you haven't, like, it just seems like it's a very oddly phrased question, but I thought maybe I'm dreaming that we had a conversation about this, but it just never made sense to me to ask a yes, no question. Maybe it's better to more friendly to phrase it, to say, describe how you've been involved in community engagement or community organizations, instead of
we can make that change.
have you participated in other community organizations?
Did you get that, Celia? Changing question 5 to describe how you've been involved
So
in
it's-
community organization.
So to rephrase, please describe your experience with previous community organizations.
In other community organizations.
Okay.
And so then the next question, have you reviewed previous
No,
commission
because then
meetings?
we've still got how has your involvement in the community led you to applying for the Library Commission, which I
Yeah.
think works
Yeah, I didn't have any.
with that.
issues with that.
With that. Is everybody
Mhm.
okay with
I
that
agree with that.
second part of
Yeah,
number 5?
You know what I'm thinking with number 5?
Mhm.
What might make sense, because we've got a question that's kind of, as you say, was pretty obvious. Then we have a very short sentence with a period. Why don't we just take the please describe, put it at the beginning and say, please describe how you have participated in other community organizations. That gets the same information, and it's not necessarily as, it's not that necessarily that yes, no opening phrase, and it gets people to start thinking about that right off the bat.
Sorry, can I just ask, Celia, are you taking notes on this? Do you feel confident that those notes we'd end up with a new set of questions, or do you want me to take them as we go?
I can
How should we
draft
do
them up and then read them back to you or send them.
that? Would be good. Thank you so much. Okay, so that would be the revision to question 5. Does anybody else have anything else to add before we move on to question 6?
No, not for question 5.
Okay. Question 6, have you reviewed previous Library Commission meeting minutes or documents related to the current library master planning process? What thoughts do you have about the recent decisions and or plans?
So again, similar to the other question, it doesn't make sense to start with a yes, no question when the obvious answer is yes. So how about considering a review of documents related to the library master planning process? What thoughts do you have about decisions in our plans?
Any feedback on that?
Denise, I think that's great. I love that change.
Sylvia Scott, jump in.
I know it's harder when you're on Zoom.
Okay,
Yeah, I think those are fine. I think it is a little, I remember, because I just filled this out a few months ago. I do remember being struck by how some of the questions were worded. So I think that anything we can do to just incorporate the same idea in one sentence is probably preferable, because I did spend a little bit of time going, is this the same question? Am I just repeating what I've answered for the first sentence? So I if we could make it simpler in some ways, I think that would be helpful.
thank you. Okay, so any other changes to question 6?
I think we're good.
Okay, so moving on to question 7. The Boulder Public Library balances traditional definitions of library services with innovation around informal learning, collaboration, literacy, and 21st century skills. In your advisory role, what's your vision for the future of our library? Any
I
other?
like this question, actually. I think it's good. It asks people to consider the way the library functions now. I move to keep this question as it is.
Does anybody mind if we say what is instead of what's?
Thank you.
All right, so everybody's happy then with question number 7, apart from the change to what is. Okay, and then thanks, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris. Great to see you. Thank you.
So question number 8, in your advisory role, how will you manage the public's priorities for the library with the trade-offs of budget, operational, technological, and physical constraints?
My concern, sort of the terminology of we're advisory, but we really don't have a management role in the public's priorities. It sort of clarifies, we are advisory, but, how will you manage the public's priorities? We really don't have a role in managing the public's priorities. I think that's why I probably answered that question with, this is an advisory body, and I'm not sure that I'm a manager of the public.
Would you move to strike the question, Benita?
I'm just thinking, do we miss anything that somebody might, highlight about their skills and abilities? But it just seems like a very staff type question, like a hiring decision as opposed to a volunteer advisory board member.
I think I would actually move to strike that question in consideration of the fact that somebody will join the commission for 8 or 9 months. And given that we now know that role even more, so I think in the past, the idea of that question was to get at how it is something that's constantly going to be balanced. And even though it's an advisory role, it's still something that has to be considered within all parts of the role that everybody has within managing or running the library. So I think we should strike that question considering the comments about the advisory role, but even more so this role will be.
It will change.
Yeah.
Actually, Jane, if I can jump in,
Yes.
I actually like that question. And the reason why I like it is that if we look at the questions 6 and 7, question 6 asks if people have read any minutes or documents to the plan. So you're getting to start them to thinking about, okay, what thoughts do they have? Then the question 7 starts saying, okay, what services? And it's getting them to start thinking about, okay, what are the services? What are the programs? What is the information in the plan? So it builds upon question 6. question 8 then is built upon 6 and 7. Because once you've seen the plan, once you've seen and start thinking about what are the services and how they balance those things, that question 8 then asks saying, how do you manage, and how do you think about the public's priorities in terms of trading off budget operations, et cetera. So to me, those 3 questions actually operate in a sort of arc, in that they build upon each other and really get people to start thinking about, okay, we've got this plan, we've got this, how are we going to balance it? I think it's a good package to keep that question 8 with 6 and 7.
I would disagree with you, Scott. One being that we will not have another budget to look at. Like the library commission will no longer have a budget because that won't exist anymore. So I would move to strike question 8.
Yeah, I think I agree, because why I absolutely see where you're
Yeah, absolutely,
going, Scott. And I think in previous years, I think it was a good question, but I just think that asking this person who will come and sit in this role for such a short period of time, and as pointed out, without a budget, it seems kind of a pointless question. And sorry, Sylvia, I see your hand up as well.
Oh, no, that's okay. So when I read that question, when I was applying, I kind of felt like the last part of the sentence gave me my answer. It kind of led me down the path of like what I needed to say in my answer. So I felt like, I don't know, it was kind of a giveaway writing it in that way. But I think I'm in agreement just based upon our situation that there's really no need to, get that information from an applicant, because it's not going to be a part of our role now.
So could I move this along by saying all those in favor of, can we take a vote?
Yeah.
All those in favor of striking question 8, please raise your hand.
I'm agnostic. If the sentiment is to just get rid of it, then they can get rid of it.
All right, cool. So we have a majority on that question.
So take that out then. So then question number 9. Some members of the public perceive that the library has a problem providing a safe and secure environment. How do you propose balancing the concerns regarding safety and security with providing free and open access in a public setting?
It always reminds me of Mary Young, because Mary Young, that would always seem to be her question as it related to the library.
I personally don't like this
I
question.
don't either.
And I would, since I would love more people to apply than not. So I think 3 additional questions is more than enough.
Yeah, and I mean, the only thing I was thinking about is a substitute for this one, if we need another one, was to just ask, what would you like to contribute during this transitional, phase to a library district, or, to a different governance structure? What do you bring? What would you like to contribute?
Yeah.
Because then it then it gives somebody an opportunity to say, I'm either like a short-termer kind of person that I like to do these kind of things, or, I really want to position myself to be, a trustee or whatever, it gives people more room.
I like that point, Benicia, and I think maybe potentially we could add in something along the lines of an experience somebody could bring in assisting transition, or in, because a big role for commissioners next year I see as being advocates for the process and being able to inform community members. I see that as being a really important skill we need right now. So do we add in something as well into that question, is so striking question number 9 completely and saying, what can you bring to the library during this time of transition? And do you have any experience in change or advocacy? Something along those lines.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jane, I think the phrase maybe you want to use is thinking about how an applicant has participated in some kind of organizational change.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, totally. Proviso at the beginning of that, in the upcoming year, the library will begin a transition into a district, and whatever the question is that we decide.
Yeah. And maybe we just say exactly what Stephen just said, and then add in what Scott said and said, please describe your experience with organizational change, or
Please describe your experience with organizational change and And as you were saying earlier,
You know,
how do you imagine?
what would you
your
like to
role-
contribute or what, you know,
Yeah, and what would
Yeah.
you like to contribute to this process?
to this process? Yeah.
Is that okay, Celia? Did we go?
Yeah,
too
I'll read
fast?
it.
That's like Frankenstein.
Share screen.
Emily.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
scratched 9, kind of
Yeah.
unofficially.
Yeah.
And now the new 8 is whatever this is. The thing, Frankenstein question.
Is it okay if I just read it?
Yes.
Not well. Isn't that like?
So for the first question would be, please describe how you have participated in other community organizations. How has your involvement in the community led you to apply for the Library Commission? Next would be considering a review of documents related to the master planning process. What are your thoughts about the decisions and plans? And the next is the same except for the what is. The Boulder Public Library balances traditional definitions of library services with innovation around informal learning, collaboration, literacy, and 21st century skills. In your advisory role, what is your vision for the future of the library? And then lastly, in the upcoming year, the library will begin its transition to a district. Please share an experience you've had with organizational change and what you would like to contribute to this process.
And how you would like to contribute to this process or?
What?
What?
Said what?
Okay,
We said what?
Yeah, would you like what?
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I like those.
I do.
That's really nice.
And do we have the right, in the one, the 7, so definitions of library services with innovation around informal learning, collaboration, literacy, and 21st century skills? Is that the right phrasing?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
It is informal learning. We typically refer to it as collaborative learning environments is what we typically refer to that. But it's fine as it is. Will it speak to a candidate? Will a candidate know what that means?
Claire Kelly, what do you think about?
Okay, does anybody have any changes to those, to the questions as Celia read them? Okay, let's move forward with those questions. Thank you so much for taking notes, Celia, and
Thank you.
catching all of
Yeah.
that nuance there.
Yes, thank you very much.
And thank you for passing those along to the city. Great. Okay, so back to the agenda as was printed and stated. We're on to item number 7, informational item, which is transition to the Boulder Library District, the process for the appointment of the Library Board of Trustees, District Board of Trustees, Board of Trustees roles, responsibilities, and roles of the Library Commission during that transition.
All right, so I assume you all read the memo. And if anything in it is not clear, you'll let me know, but the city council and the county commissioners have appointed 2 members of each body who will now form a committee, which is the library board, the library district board of trustee appointment committee. And they have to determine what processes they will follow. And in the end, they will recommend a number of candidates, either 5, 6, or 7, to the full bodies of city council and the county commissioners for ratification by 2/3 majority at the time of their choosing. So the timeline that we currently have, there are some dates that are scheduled, right? So city council has scheduled a date in early January to weigh in on their thoughts on the process. So I'm assuming that the subcommittee will have some kind of process in place by that time, by January. And then they also have, city council also has a meeting scheduled in March, mid-March, to ratify those appointments. So I think that seems like a reasonable timeline that the Board of Trustees would be appointed by March. Now, if you follow council meetings or council minutes, you'll know that they're considering a million different options. Anything that you can imagine is a possibility because the Colorado library law does not define what or how they go about appointing trustees. They could, this is not going to happen, but they could get together tomorrow, decide on 7 of their closest friends and decide that was the thing they were going to do. And they would say, well, this is how we decided on 7 of our close friends. They could appoint members that are already serving on other bodies, such as the Library Commission. They could, and I suspect, since the city almost always does this, have an application process. So they will advertise an application process. They will have a set of questions. People who are interested in being trustees would apply to that process and then be whether reviewed and or interviewed by that subcommittee. So that's my assumption of what the process will look like. Yes, Benita is here.
So when you said 5, 6, or 7, where does that?
No, that's defined in the state law. So
Okay.
they can choose, they have to choose either 5, 6, or 7. We assume the Library District Advisory Committee recommended 7 at our suggestion. And I don't know that they will go to 7. I somewhat doubt that they're going to choose an even number. So I doubt that they will choose 6. My assumption is they will choose either 5 or 7 members of trustees.
Yeah, because I just wondered where that number sits, but it wasn't in any of their, it wasn't in the ballot.
No, it was there was a memo to council last week. And it was included in that memo. It is clearly outlined in the state law that they have that choice, 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah.
There are some library district board of trustees throughout the state who have an even number. And that is something that other districts have decided to do. Maybe that is because it gives them an opportunity or a window if somebody resigns that they can then have 6. I don't know, but there are boards of trustees that have an even number.
Okay, and then. So it is the same. So there was a time that it was considered that the county commissioners had their own appointments. Appointees, X number, and the city had their set. That's no longer the case, right?
They could decide that, right? So they have to define what the process would be. So they could decide the 2 county commissioners get to appoint these, but both bodies have to vote on approve and ratify by 2/3 majority, all of the candidates who will be board of trustees. But how they do the recommendation and putting them on the list, that is entirely up to that committee, which now consists of Claire Levy, Martha Loshimine, Mayor Brockett, and Nicole Spear.
Mhm.
They will have to make that determination of what process they want to follow. And we as the library, we will not have a role in that process as far as I understand it. So we will not be involved. And, the city and the county are still talking about what staff support will be required for that, because there's always staff support when there's a committee. I don't believe it's going to be library staff. I'm lobbying for it not to be library staff, the trustee.
And we heard that, Chris on behalf of the foundation sent his communication to them, but that's the extent of sort of the engagement of the foundation with the process.
As far as I know, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know of any other engagement they may have. They may, they may be talking to the people in the committee. I don't really know. They did send a letter. I received that same letter that went to council. So I don't know what else they're doing.
They sent it to council and the commissioners, right?
Yeah. Council, the commissioners, and
Yeah.
a bunch of staff and city manager and attorneys, everybody else got it. So
But not the library commission. So,
I guess not.
No. Maybe, could you share a copy of the letter with us?
Yeah, it's public information once it's received by council. So
Yeah.
I'll forward it to you. It's a nice letter. I don't
Yeah,
remember
but I mean,
precisely what it said. It
Should have had like the chair CC'd on the letter, I would suggest.
Yeah, they advocate for a number of different things, to consider different bodies to draw from in their pool. They also make recommendations, which I don't believe the committee will take them up on, but they may. It's something that we are doing in terms of reaching out to the state library. The state library has I'm meeting with the state library in January. And the state library has a staff member who is a liaison to boards of trustees throughout the state. And so I will be meeting with her as well in January to see what services they can provide to a board of trustees once they are appointed. And they do typically do a lot of onboarding and training and kind of defining running through for the for trustee members, what the laws are and what they are needed to do, what their responsibilities are. So I think that'll be a relatively smooth thing. I don't know that the committee is going to do that. The trustee appointment committee, that seems like a heavy lift for them, but I know the people. In fact, the woman who's now the person who was reaching out, who's doing the trustee appointment, was someone who applied for a job with us a number of years ago when she was looking for work.
Is that a group that could they give examples or help if should that group run into questions of, how is this done in other locations, or is it purely to onboarding and library law?
They can give examples. We are also collecting, I mean, it's not to your question, but I'm also collecting examples. I have at least 5 different libraries with their district board of trustees onboarding process.
Okay.
Their trustee appointment process. So in the end, the board of trustees will also have some input. I mean, right now, the establishing entities have control of that process. Once a board of trustees is seated, that is certainly fair game for the board of trustees and those establishing entities to talk about how they want to do it in the future. The establishing entities have control of the process and can take that control back at any time that they want, but they can also designate that control. I would say 99% of the libraries in the state of Colorado, they have designated that appointment process, primarily the interviews to the boards of trustees. And then they send a recommended candidate, and by and large, then the governing bodies, the establishing entities, the county commissioners and that kind of thing do approve of, although there are cases where they have not. They typically do approve of the recommendations that the board of trustees make for future board of trustee members. But that's something to be established and worked out in the following year. The initial step is really the committee of 4 has to establish the processes by which they are going to appoint, and then actually appoint and put in front of the 2 elected bodies, county commissioners and city council, for a 2/3 majority ratification, at which point then the board of trustees will be seated. At that moment, from the moment they are ratified, then the board of trustees will be seated and begin meeting. They will.
Hey, David,
Yes.
I have a question. It may be a premature question, but given how this subcommittee, they're going to be doing their work and making some recommendations, do you have a sense that they will be, when they create that process, that whatever number of trustees that are selected, will they all be selected for a certain term at one time, or will those terms be staggered? Or
The terms are staggered, Scott, and that's also defined by the law. And so if they choose 5 members, then each trustee is given a term of either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. If they choose 6 members, it is only the 5th and 6th appointee are given a 5-year appointment. The others are given 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if it is 7 members, the first 3, there are 3 that are 1, 2, and 3. And then those committee members who are 2 will have a 4-year appointment and 2 will have a 5-year appointment. So that's clearly defined in the law. So that they don't have much leeway on that. They can't appoint 3 people to a 1-year term. In other words, they can't appoint 3 people to a 2-year term. They can't appoint 2 people to a 2-year term. There will be 1 person for a 1 year, 1 person for a 2-year, 1 person for a 3-year, and then at least 1 for a 4 and 1 for a 5. Perhaps 2 for a 4, perhaps 2 for a 5.
And as a hypothetical follow-up, David,
Mhm.
thinking about, if potential trustees know that information going in, realistically, how many people do you think will be applying for a 1-year term or a 2-year term, knowing that there could be some that are 4 or 5-year terms?
That I couldn't say.
But then, sometimes people would then apply to be reappointed or whatever, right? And that, so it actually, it depends, right?
Yeah, I don't know, Scott. And I don't know that they'll even allow that. I don't know that the trustee appointment committee will allow people to choose the number of years. That may be something that they negotiate with the people who are appointed, but I don't know that they're going to let them choose, like, here are all the applicants for the 1-year position, here are all the applicants for the 2-year position. I think they a lot more likely that you apply to be a board of trustee, and then they will talk over with the successful candidates, how many years are you willing to serve?
But there is a term limit.
It's 5 years. I don't know about reappointment process. I don't know that that's defined in law. I don't know that you can be reappointed for another term. Although, you know, that's probably up to the Board of Trustees
That's what
when
I'm
they
saying,
determine their own bylaws. So
Yeah.
when they determine their bylaws, they could feasibly do it for longer.
So Denver passed their district initiative.
Not a district, but a
Oh, they
tax.
didn't, they just a tax increase, so it wasn't to form a district.
That's correct.
Okay. So you just thought be in the same place, but I guess not.
There are a lot of libraries who, you know, have done this recently, not a lot. Nearest to us, Berthoud was only 3 years ago, I think, 4 years ago. Fort Collins, 15 years ago. So there are people who've been around with the experience, but
Was Lions on the recent?
Lions 2013, yeah, 14, I think, 2014. We're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, I think the Board of Trustee Appointment Committee, the 4 people who were assigned, I think they all take it seriously. I think they all have the best interests really in mind. I think they are looking to do whatever is the right thing. I don't think that any of them are taking the responsibility lightly. It was a conversation with the public, if you remember during the conversation, you know, during the election, was that it's a, whatever, it's a unappointed, unelected board, and they'll do whatever. And the way the law is written, it does give the governing bodies really that authority. And so the governing bodies, elected officials are taking the process seriously, and I think we need to appreciate that.
Yep. Will be interesting to sort of see a timeline and it's a process.
Yeah, the best I have for timeline right now is I think you will find out about what the process probably is in the January timeframe.
Mhm.
And sometime in March, we'll know who the recommended trustees are going to be. And I think that's the best I have for the timeline. So what the intervening process is, whether it's like, come, have open office hours, come on in and talk to us if you're interested. You got 15 minutes, and like, or whether they should set up a Shark Tank environment, like they could sit there and like people could come in and say why they should be on it, and then they're like, you ever voted off or whatever. Who knows what they'll do? That is entirely up to them. Being honest, though, I think it's pretty fair to assume the city has one process that they follow. It is calling for applicants and interest. We did that they do it for boards and commissions every single year. We did that. We followed that process for the Library District Advisory Committee. The city follows that process for every single committee they have. Police Oversight Committee, they put out a call for applicants, interested applicants. They review those applicants, they narrow it down to the people who they're going to interview, and then they interview and make a selection. I assume that's probably the process that will be followed.
You never know.
You never know. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sorry that we don't have a lot of clarity about what the role of the commission will be, because I do believe it's still up in the air. Council has a boards and commission committee. There are 2 members of it. I don't believe that they've reviewed all of the questions yet. And I don't know that they've had the opportunity to stop and say, like, why are we appointing a new library commissioner? And so it may still come back after we've submitted the questions that they ask themselves that question. And then, you know, they may have a
So who are
different
the 2
position.
members?
The 2 members are Lauren Folkerts and Tara Weiner.
Okay.
They are the members of the boards and commission committee. And, you know, that will begin in the new year. So they will be ramping all that stuff up. I think our questions are due yesterday. And and so they'll start that review process this December. And then I think they typically do announce by mid-January what board and commission vacancies they have. And then there's a web page where people can go and apply for boards and commissions. They typically make that decision in March.
May I ask a question about your position? Since you oversee both the Arts Commission and the Library District.
I don't oversee the arts
Oh, I
anymore.
thought
We
you-
actually, we, in anticipation of this coming to pass, we moved the arts in April.
Oh, okay.
So the arts department and the commission moved to community vitality in April of this year.
I didn't know that.
I didn't realize that at all.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just looking at your nameplate with library/arts director.
well, we gotta get that changed. It's everywhere. It's still, it found its way in Teams. Like I don't even know how a new program that we just rolled out I mean, in Workday, if I'm doing Workday, I'm thinking like, oh, that's not, I know I didn't fill out the form that way. Workday just started in November, so it's like hard to imagine. Yeah, it's been, it's been interesting for a long time because the two departments don't overlap. They each have their own advisory commissions. The only thing that was connected were Celia and I. So Celia is actually still taking notes for the Arts Commission with, as an agreement with Community Vitality, but I believe this month is the last. Right? Yeah, so I stopped going to Arts Commission's meetings back in April and yeah, and Celia will be done this month, so we'll have no more connection.
And they've moved offices and everything now. They're somewhere in the middle of Pearl.
Yeah, no,
Above the
that's a nice,
garage.
that's a nice office space there. That's nice too, but yeah, so it's the legacy of Marcelly. Oh, excuse me, I was just saying the legacy of Marcelly Graylup that, the library and the arts became
Yeah, it became one.
under her umbrella.
Yep.
Any other questions on that piece? Thank you for taking the time to put that together. It's helpful as we go forward.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah, and I just to reassure the commission from our vantage point, we already began work, right? So we are beginning work now in preparation for a board of trustees being seated sometime in March. It's possible that they would be seated sooner. So we are scrambling to get a lot of data compiled so that we were able to put it in front of them. A budget, current policies, current, HR related policies, benefits package. We're trying to put together a full packet so that they will have from the moment they are seated, at least data for them to start digging into to understand all of the things that they're going to have to do. And if you're, thinking of it yourself, or if you're recruiting your friends, I've been contacted by a number of members of the public who are interested in it. It is not a ceremonial position. It is not it's not something that's just going to look good in your resume. I'm not afraid. I'm quite convinced that the first year of work is going to be a heavy lift. And I've told applicants who have called me up, and not applicants, people who are interested, were calling me up to expect easily between 20 and 30 hours a month in the first year of the formation of the library district, because there is so much work to be done before a successful transition of the staff in January of 2024. It's just an enormous amount of work. And we'll have plenty of things for them to pick and choose from, templates and all that stuff laid out so that they can take a look and make good solid recommendations about what it is they want to do and provide feedback. But so they're not inventing it all from scratch, but it's a lot of work. It really is just the scope of it, sitting down with the team today and looking at all the different things they'll have to make decisions on in relatively rapid fashion. And what is a time frame that is respectful to both the community and to the staff, the community that voted for things that they want to see done yesterday, and to the staff who are kind of in a limbo situation for the course of 2023, they will have to make some of these decisions readily, quickly, right? And so hopefully the people that are in there have some experience, have some knowledge of what the current operation of the library is, but there's no guarantees. They'll prepare as if they know nothing.
And seeing as this meeting is recorded tonight, clarifying the HR and benefits package is for the staff of the library, not for the trustees.
That's correct. The HR package is for the staff who at least the way the library district advisory committee had foreseen it, and what their recommendation was is that those staff would transfer in their entirety, keeping their salaries, titles, and benefits to the extent that that was possible under a district scenario.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, let's move on to item number 8, which is our library director report. So up again, David.
Yep, so we went over the adjustment. We went over the adjustment of base at the last meeting. If you have any questions on
There is
that.
an error in that table, but
Sorry.
some of the capital expenses is actually 2.2 million. It's a cut and paste error. I'm sorry, I got it.
Instead of the
Interrupted while I was
1.7.
preparing it at the last minute. So, yeah.
You should say that number again, 2 point. Can you tell them?
Yes, it's 2,267,915.
So what changes?
On the, do you see the table?
Yeah.
The highlighted capital total that says 1.71.
Right, so is that just because it isn't added correctly or? what-
That's correct.
Okay,
It's not added
okay,
correctly.
that's what I just wondered what changed. So, okay. Hadn't done that math for you.
So as you can see, video recordings are possible for posting video recordings. Should we continue to do hybrid meetings after December? I don't know that that was your intention. I think you expressed an intention that we go back to in person in January. So if we go back to person in January, we will then post audio recordings of future meetings, but video recording, posting video recordings is acceptable. There is an outline here for racial equity training for boards and commissions. I'd encourage you take it. Celia mostly, but myself also participated in a weeks-long program in terms of race and equity training for boards and commissions. I think it was a worthwhile endeavor. They brought in a really great consultant who worked through a lot of the issues that are faced and certainly faced by boards and commissions. But there are options here, should you choose or choose as a body to attend race and equity training for boards and commissions. Some of them are to join an employee new orientation, which involves like our first kind of training that we offer for all staff members. But I can also assure you is quite good training. There are other options here for you as well. And so you may want to make a decision on that or may just want to avail that of individual members as you see fit. That's entirely up to you. And then.
Can I?
Yes,
sorry,
please,
So we have the option here to make this decision as a group to do this, or we could each choose to get this training in the different options
Yeah.
here. So as a commission, should we take this information and consider it for our next meeting to just have this as a quick discussion about whether we do want to do it as a group, but maybe give everybody a chance to process this and see what they think they could do?
I mean, I read through, I didn't know whether it was individual or group, but I mean, just knowing that like there's one session in January. So if we were having discussion in January, we would be aligned there. But what I wondered about was, so the training that you all went through, was it like a train the trainers and then these other sessions are being done by staff? Or is this bringing in the consultant?
A lot of the training that you see for the new employee orientation is done by staff. And the program that we went through, really, this training that Celia, I think, completed every single course. I was not able to attend every single one. It was focused on what we could do to make this training available. But so then staff were given an opportunity to talk about their concerns around the fact that all staff are going through all this training, and yet the boards and commissions that city council is appointing have not, or we don't know what type of background and training they have. And so there was an inconsistency in terms of maybe an inconsistency in the manner in which we applied the city's values around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so that was the gist of, am I wrong there, Celia? That was the gist really of the kind of opening of, but we went through, it was kind of a training for us, right? Not training us to train you, it was training
Okay, yeah.
staff to
It was
like,
for our own.
how do you deal with all of these things, right? And what is your past experience and what lived experience?
And it was city staff, but then we did have a consultant join to lead some of the sessions. And one of the parts was the movie, which I think might be the same movie that is listed here for you guys as well. But yeah, I think the first stage of it was to try to get staff all on the same page, language and terms and history kind of, and then it's to go outward into council and commissions and board.
But there was never a survey of board and commission members to ask us, right? Like,
And
how much equity training do you need as a woman of color who has a lived experience, right? I mean, yeah.
And the council currently doesn't, there's not a standard question in the boards and commission interviews about it either. So I think that was part of the, that may be something that changes. I know neither Celia or I are on that boards and commission liaison staff.
Mhm.
And so the clerk's office is, and they serve in leadership role in this, but there's also city council liaisons who served on that committee, and they were all participants. Clay Fong, the new county administrator, was in there because he was also managed a human relations commission, but
And wanted to put this in here because they were kind of reaching out to us about how we think the commissions would most want to engage with this training. So I thought it'd be best to check how you all felt.
So the it part of it is a question to me, like, what is the training? Because I just think it's really important to know before, like, committing to such a significant chunk of time. 3.5 hours, okay, 2.5 hour live train, like, I don't know, training in
Why don't
what?
we ask back for a summary of what the training sessions will be?
Yeah, and if you'd like they even suggested Maria could come to one of our meetings to discuss what y'all could maybe get out of it or.
It would just have been nice to see the city manager talk to us about other things and not, just that, right? I mean, anyway, where is the film? What's the film?
If it's the same film we watched, it was the one that's on Netflix called Who We Are.
Okay.
Okay, the one about Boulder.
No, that one's called, this is not
Not
Who We
Who We
Are.
Not Who We Are,
Yeah, it
sorry.
just confused me because
no, this
I
is-
wondered about that one because the hospital board was doing their own set of diversity training. And so they did a session with that film first, and then they're doing their other equity training and stuff following that. So that's why I wondered what the film was here. Yeah. And how that tied, but I think it is really important. It is important to me to know how this training is structured and how, how it aligns for the work we're doing as a commissioner, or is it just something, is it really tailored to a board and commission member's role? Or is it, something else?
Let's get some of that data and come back to you. I think it's, it's quite. So what the city has done and what they've asked all the staff to do is to analyze all the policies. So the city's focus has been on systemic racism and the degree to which institutions pass racist actions on. It's not about an individual person's predisposition towards race. It's about the decisions we make with regard to policy. And all of the boards and commissions have a policy role. So my assumption is that it's going to focus on the impacts, the film focuses on the impacts of policy decisions by elected bodies and other bodies. And then that's, I'm assuming what the training would all, for the boards and commissions would also focus on is like, understanding the impact of what policy decisions you make.
Yeah. Well, in 25 years, the city's come a long way, sort of. I just remember being like assigned to be leading like diversity conversations. And I can just still see the table where we would meet, which was Marcelly's table there. And, all white folks around me, and then I'm there talking about diversity. And it's just like, talking about being set up for failure. Yeah, it's this, but I'm glad that there's energy behind this focus. But it's really important, not just for this commission, but to, because it could just go in so many different directions that I'm not sure like the value is going to, unless it's clear and directed.
And I think with the option number 2, that the training can be incorporated into the commission's monthly meeting. That by,
2.5 hours though.
exactly. But I also think we have to make sure that is going to be space, which I'm guessing there will be, considering that the role of this commission is changing into this next year. But that would be another thing, is to look at the calendar, just to know whether that is even one of the options we want to discuss. Because if we can't fit it into the schedule of things that we need to cover in this next year, then that's kind of a moot point. So. Okay, so we'll come back with more information and then in January's meeting about that piece.
All right. And that concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, David. Do you have any, would it be appropriate for you to tell us who was hired in the makerspace to take over for Zach's position? Is that public yet?
No.
Okay.
They mentioned somebody to me, but that was a week or so, but I don't have any memory whatsoever.
I was wondering. Yeah.
Where did that person go?
Zach, he was hired by CU.
Yeah, one of our makers was hired away from ICU, which is, it's nice. It's great to see somebody succeed, and it's It's a big loss for us.
In what area?
In
To run
Atlas,
Yeah. To
to
run
take over for Alicia's old space, the BTU lab.
Hmm.
It's a makerspace inside of Atlas in the engineering college.
Okay,
Yep.
Blow things up lab.
really? Okay,
You sounds.
okay, okay,
Yeah, sorry, acronyms
it's-
of academia,
Yeah,
sorry.
kind of like the makerspace over at CU.
okay. Very cool.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you very much, David.
thank you, David.
And then items, so number 9, items from the commission. So updates from commissioners representing commissions in other areas. Foundation update, which please feel free to add. We did get a good foundation update.
Yeah.
Tell us about the gala.
The gala was fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for attended. Thank you, everybody who volunteered and participated, and the library staff for making time for everybody for the gala to happen. It was a really, it was like a snowy day, so it was kind of amazing that people did still come out for the library on those days. In addition to that, I guess I don't have any other additional updates as Chris did. I would just remind people as they're thinking about their year-end gift giving that the Library Foundation now more than ever would love support. So if any of their commissioners are inclined to give the end of the year gift, feel free. Library Foundation is amazing, whether I'm allowed to say that in this meeting or not. Sorry. I did. So I'm just saying.
And I also would like to add that the gala, in the past 10 years that I've been involved in the library and the foundation, I have never seen the foundation and the library come together.
Yeah.
And I mean, come together in a celebratory way, like the gala, where there was that many staff involved on their off time with the foundation. And I think it was absolutely wonderful. Obviously, the library and the staff and the foundation and the staff have all and have always worked together, but I have not seen that happen in the way that it happened at the gala, and I loved every minute of it.
Me too. The programming was just great, and it was just really well put together, and including the new cafe managers, giving everybody a preview of the food, which was really exciting. My husband now has the coupon on our refrigerator. When can I use this? Soon. When can I use this?
I was out of town, otherwise I would have been there. I'm usually there, so sorry I missed that.
Another one next year. It was really a lovely event, and it was really just, it was great energy.
I'm excited for it to set the stage as well for people to look for that event at that time of year, to establish that this is a really fun time and that people should have that on their calendar to come out and celebrate the library.
It was very like weird, like a PBS like pledge show live. It was fun. Like the Beach Chicas came out and like did the dance of the bumblebee with the nets and their full costumes. It was a weird performance art thing with the shelving that was very funny. It was like the shelvers.
Was it very funny or just uncomfortable?
It was memorable.
It was memorable.
Yeah.
Well, say more.
The shelvers came out, they did like a
Awesome.
sketch. They did like a sketch,
yeah.
like the library staff did a sketch where they were like,
Yeah.
a comedy sketch where they were like, wow, all these like amazing performers and are part of this gala. Boy, all we do is shelve books. Maybe we should think about a sexier way to shelve books. And they were like, maybe we should. And then like 2 sessions later, they come out in like disco roller skate outfits, waving books across the stage. Like some sort of like SNL sketch. It was funny.
It was funny.
And then
Definitely
they
funny.
used the books to symbolize people making pledges.
Yeah.
Kind of in real time. And it was.
And they got the count wrong, because I'm obsessive about such things, like they missed
A book, and I was like, but I was like that.
It was really thoughtful. It was super thoughtful, and hats off to Juliet for organizing that. And like, and the host, Lily James, was a great host, and Chris and Juliet and the music. It was
Yeah.
quite an event, actually. And it wasn't too like, it was like a real, I've been to 2 previous ones, and it felt like a real like upgrade. Like it was entertaining.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
It was really fun. And then Scott, was there anything you wanted to add there about the foundation?
No, I did not attend the event because I had the flu.
Oh,
You had the flu the week before, I had the flu there, so I was a little bit out of it. But did Chris mention how much they made at that event? They mentioned, I think they've said they made $77,000 out of that one event, so they did.
Yeah. Yeah, I was hearing something like 60, but we left early, so
Yeah.
that would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
the goal for the night was 60. Was
Oh,
the
that
goal.
was the goal.
The goal was 60, but they
Sick.
surpassed it, 70 something.
In
Which is
like
pretty
10
good.
minutes.
Yeah, which is pretty good because attendance was not high.
No, because of the snow, yeah.
Spirits were high, but attendance was not.
Here's the building, the library had closed. It was that snowiest day. We closed it.
Yeah.
at 4 o'clock, yeah.
Oh, you closed early because
Yes.
yeah, so funny.
City closed all the buildings at 4 o'clock, yeah.
Yep.
People still trudged out. That was
Yeah.
great.
That's great. And then the other update then in this area is, as Chris mentioned, the Boulder Library Champions is looking to disband, and by December should have those pieces wrapped up. Final finance reports are being filed, websites being archived, information is being moved. Some of that information is being moved over to the foundation, and all those pieces will be kept, but the Boulder Library Champions are no longer needed.
And I believe the URL will be in the custody of the foundation.
Yes.
Yeah. The web properties. So like the foundation will own the Twitter and the TikTok and all those sites.
And some of the photography and then some of the information put together about the history is being kept so that it's
Johnny's binders.
Yep, Johnny's brain. It's being filed. They don't fit anywhere, so.
Those are going to Carnegie.
Uh-huh, yeah. Cool, okay. Update on emails and phone calls. We have not had any this month. And then just one item before we close the meeting. There is a staff holiday party that we have been invited to as a commission, and it's next Thursday, the 15th of December at the library from 7 till 9 o'clock. So I think everybody received an email. It would be lovely to see anybody who can make it.
Maybe there could be an encore of this skit performance.
I know,
I'm
right?
sure there will be other things.
They'll be there.
The staff were throwing a party and honestly, they really wanted people to come. They asked, can we get the commission? Can we get the foundation? Can we get the champions? Can we get all these groups to come out so they can celebrate with us? So this is, I mean, it's not something we made up. They really, really wanted. So I hope some of you will be able to come. They really want everyone to be able to show up and
I'll be there.
You know.
Yes.
Cool.
Hang
Awesome.
out.
So, yeah.
Yep.
And I'm leading book queries for on Wednesday next week. So if you have an LGBTQIA or ally teen and you want to have them join book queries, have them contact that group via Instagram, and I'll be leading the discussion. I'm excited.
What's the book?
The book is Heartstopper. It's a book about two British schoolboys who fall in love and their friends. It's a Netflix show as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very good Netflix show. If you haven't watched it, it's like an amazing show. Yeah. It's really, really good.
And maybe a little unconventional here, but I would like to thank the Teen Space. Our family is loving the Teen Space. As a parent, I would like to thank the time that my kids spend in the Teen Space. So please pass that on to the staff. It is an amazing space, and we're utilizing it and loving it.
Say more about it. What makes it appealing?
I have a 6th grader who has a newfound independence and takes himself off to the library to hang out for 4 hours at a time at the Teen Space.
Oh, wow.
And I have to say, as a parent, it's wonderful to watch the library for our family grow with us. We've had little ones who have consistently gone to story time and used the kid space. And I think sometimes among people there is a feeling that when the kids are beyond that kid space, where do they go? And of course, there's all the wonderful programming, but the Teen Space as an option for people to just go and be especially in that age group, to me, I just think that this is fantastic. So
My selfish answer is the staff. We have a great team.
They're
of staff.
awesome.
The staff who work with the teams are just astonishingly good. Every single one of them. They are
Mhm.
great.
Because it's been a challenge in Boulder, right? I mean, the teen, sort of programming, right?
yes.
And
Yeah.
what to do. So that's why I was just curious about what that's like and what's appealing.
Well, I
And
think
staff is a big piece of that. That's
absolutely
good
the
to hear.
staff, and I think the staff are the people that you want around your kids.
Yeah.
And I think so when I know my kid's heading there, that the staff will be there, and that's as a parent what I want, because I think especially in the age group, they don't always listen to you. But if you can send them somewhere where they're around good people, it just feels really good. But I also think as well, part of it is lowering that down to sixth grade, I think is just excellent, because that's 11, 12-year-olds. They're not necessarily teens yet, but I think that makes them feel grown up and gives them a space to be. So I think that really works.
Say that for decades. Good.
Yeah, I think it's
Is there enough space in the teen space?
Yes. And it kind of moves and changes shape all the time. Usually-
Where's it at?
It's on the second floor. Do you know where the treehouse is? The area we call the treehouse has the green carpeting and looks out over the top.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's adjacent to that, right?
Okay.
So they have a lot of different, they have a sound studio, they have a lot of technology, they have a lot of different stuff that kids can play with, but it's really kind of a space where kids unwind a little bit. I think I was totally wrong about what they might want to do, because I kept trying to encourage them, like, give them incentives to do stuff for their college application. It's like, that's not what they want to do.
Jeez,
But it's like,
Dad.
yeah.
Dad.
Age 11.
They can attract more kids if we give them like incentives in terms of work stuff.
ACT prep course.
They don't have any idea. They just want to come in here and play like video games. And so, yeah, so we've kind of created a space where, I don't know.
Yeah.
Leanne's kind of like I don't know how to characterize it. She's a team librarian in the best way. And then we have several others that go and work in the space as well. And they all have that same, I think the staff love it. The staff who work in the space absolutely love their jobs.
And they did a cupcake competition last month, and it was
Yeah.
packed, and the kids were icing cupcakes. It's just shout out to the teen space.
Yeah, it's really
Alright.
accepting space. It feels like
Mhm.
really truly accepting, like no social hierarchies. Everybody there is very polite to each other. In my experience, maybe they just behave well around me because I'm
And then when you
the
leave.
adult in the room. But like it just seems really like a space I wish I'd had when I was a teen. It's really cool.
Huh, that sounds really great.
I
Okay,
love our city. We do good stuff.
all right. With that, unless there's any other questions, comments, or things anybody would like to add, Sylvia, back to the
Hit those slots, Sylvia.
the shows and the fountains, and thanks for finding the time while you were away. So
Will
thank you.
do.
Stay away from the blackjack table.
Okay.
So is our next meeting going to be here? Or where will it
Be
be?
back at the library.
Carnegie?
Carnegie, that's right, yeah.
Are we going in rotation again?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
Heck yeah.
that was the request, yeah.
oh, that's great.
yeah,
Okay, so Carnegie.
Be at Carnegie.
excellent.
Oh, when does Carnegie open full time, David?
Sometime next year, maybe.
It's a city government response.
Not in the next 2 weeks before the end of the year, so.
For the next meeting.
Okay, well, let's close this meeting then. Thank you.
All right,
everybody.
bye, y'all. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us, Sylvia.
Thank you.